What am I even doing? What is going on, guys? And today we are back. And we are doing episode 3, I believe, of Dereliction of Doooty. We're going to jump into it with two stud hands today. The first one is going to be a deuce to 7 razz hand. The second one is going to be a stud high hand. For this first one here, we are playing deuce to 7 razz. So again, the worst hand is going to win. 7, 5, 4, 3, 2 is the best hand. This is stud. So ranges are going to be very, very, very different with respect to what the up cards are going forward. And we'll kind of dig into some of the that in a little bit here. The first thing I would like to say is as an ace to 5 razz, the king of spades is the bring-in. In this game, the ace of spades is the almighty bring-in. So if you get this card, you are paying some extra money, and most likely you are not going to be continuing with your hand very often. So in this situation, if we look around at the board, obviously we talk about the board textures a fair bit in this game. And the basically in this spot, the ace is going to bring it in. The 9 has a chance to play. The king and the jack behind realistically are not going to with face cards. And then we have an interesting spot here with the jack with one low card behind. And again, the ace is just unlikely to play. If this was stud 8, it'd be different. We probably would somehow, if we had like equity, the equivalent of our hand, we'd probably actually just fold because it's so likely, it's just much more likely that the bring-in's going to play. But in this game, it's just less likely the bring-in's going to play. So it's going to fold to us here in with the jack of diamonds, and we have a decision. Do we kind of like play our hand, or we fold? I think we have too much hand here to fold actually with 2 low cards in the hole, especially with only one person behind us, and we are blocking his card, which means it's a little better for our equity because we are less likely to pair that 6 later on in the hand. So if we kind of just start it off, see the ace brings it in, the 9 folds to us. We had another Badusi hand here that will just go away in a second. All right, and we get back to over here, and XM raises. Now, playing with this player, I would definitely say that he can have some bricks in the hole, so his range is a little bit wider in this situation. Going forward, that's going to matter. We're going to jump into stud flop draw here in a little bit once we get into the later streets, because I think it's really important to think about kind of going forward, like what does their range look like. So let's start off, and we call. XM here catches a 9, which obviously is pretty good. Plus there was a 9 dead, so this is a better card than average, I would say, for him. We do catch an 8, and we are going to continue in this situation here. We have a jack draw, plus we have a backdoor 8 draw as well. So we're going to see a 5th street here for sure. We can just make the best hand on the next street as well too, obviously. Okay, now XM catches a deuce in this situation, and there's no deuces dead, so it's kind of like, I would say neutral-ish at this point, but obviously like he wants a deuce in his hand. So this is like quite a good card for him. It's just more along the lines of like, does he pair it or not? If he's got a wide range, like not necessarily. But here's the important thing with our hand. We now have 4 to an 8. He is technically blocking us with a deuce, and none of the other cards are live. But if we think that our opponent here is trying to isolate us pretty light, it becomes a very interesting street for us. So if we kind of jump into it, and if you see me moving my mouse in the video, I was kind of explaining it in game what I thought was going on, is that he bets, and then I'm like, well, I have an 8 draw in this situation. My opponent can be relatively wide, so I actually think that we should go for a value raise, based on like the equity going forward here. So I do raise it, and he calls. Now, if we just go back for a second and just play it out to 5th street again, it's going to go bet, call, and it's going to go bet and raise. Okay, so if we stop it right here, we're going to bring in our really good friend, stud flop draw. And we're going to start here with what we think the occasional hand over here for XM is. We gave him a 65% range. I don't know if this is correct or not. Like basically the question is like, when I limp the jack, how often do I think my opponent there is going to try to isolate raise me? And I put in about 65%, about 2/3 of the time. Now this could be higher. So I'm going to leave it right now at 65, obviously giving him kind of a tighter range than what I think it could be. If I'm playing against the tighter player, this should definitely change. But right now we'll start with 65%. As we can see here against that type of range with our hand, we're pushing almost 60% equity, which I think in my mind is a very clear situation where we want to be raising our equity in this spot. So we can kind of just really quickly look at the different ranges. So if we give him something like, if he's going to do it so often and give him an 80% range, how are we doing in this situation? You know, right at about 60%. And like, say this player is relatively tight and 25. Just say really tight. We're just looking at the again, the differences in equities going forward. Now they have the equity edge in this spot for sure. I mean, obviously, if they're a little bit tighter, that's the thing. But if you're playing against a player who likes to isolate raise you at a fair bit, and that was my read in this situation, then we should be doing some raising with the 8 draw, and we'll kind of just go forward. Now, one thing I will also say in this situation as well is when we raised, we didn't get 3-bet. And that's important because if he does have a 9 with a better draw in the situation, he should definitely be putting in more money in this pot. No questions asked, I think. You know, I always make the case of like, you know, your opponent should probably find situations where they have some traps, etc. The thing is like in this situation, I don't think there's a lot of trapping, quote unquote, going on because, you know, I can improve to the better hand on the next street. And if he's got the best hand here, he's printing against me. So he should just be putting in more money in this spot. If he has something along the lines of like, oh, I don't know, maybe something like deuce, 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 or maybe deuce 6 because I don't obviously have a 6 showing. Maybe that's a hand to turn into a 3-bet bluff. That might make a little bit of sense also, but I would say just reasonably, like if he's got a strong hand here, he should be 3-betting. So when he just calls in this situation too, you know, we always say something like, if he's not raising in this spot, something's wrong with his hand. That's kind of the situation that I would definitely say. So, all right, we call, and now in the next street, he makes a 10 and I pair a 7. And this is one thing that I have to, I would say, scream out loud with you guys in general. In this situation, if this was a razz hand and I had a strong draw versus like a rough made hand, the equities are relatively close. We'll get into that in a minute. But in deuce to 7, if he has a made 10 here, let's just think about this from like a deuce to 7 perspective. I don't have it up, but I do have the deuce to 7 ranges up, so we'll look at that in a minute. The deuce 7 razz ranges. But if he has a made 10 here and I have an 8 draw, think about this for a second. If he pats the 10, okay, if he pats the 10 in deuce to 7 and I have an 8 draw against it, he has about 67, 65% equity against me, something along those lines. He's about a 2/3 favorite. And then in this situation, he goes ahead and checks. Now, this might just be the fact that players have not really done the best job in like playing deuce to 7 unless they're playing like higher limits, going from ace to 5 razz to deuce to 7, because again, if he's got a rough main hand, I have a good draw, then we're basically like flipping more often than are close to flipping. And if we go back to stud flop draw over here, we can see basically the next street, when we pair 7s, he's pushing 60% equity against our range, even with 65% now. That's just because, again, he most likely has a made hand here. He has, if he continues in this spot, it is very unlikely that he has 2 pair at this point, or like a brick and a pair. It's more likely he has a card that just made his hand to a 10. And this is a spot where he needs to be betting because he is pushing a ton of equity against a board that looks like Jack 8, 7, 7. Because if he has one card that is unpaired underneath the 10 here, he is pushing about 60% equity against us, and he is printing money against our hand. So going back to the hand briefly, he does check, and we think about it in game for a while because I was like, you know, there's something really wrong here if he's not betting. But, you know, part of it also can be too sometimes that I don't think he's going for check raise. I just think that I think players, again, have not really made the transition over to deuce razz yet, as well as like ace to 5. So I think that this probably was just a mischeck, and we'll get there in a second when we see his hand. But we elect to check back here, thinking about it for a second, and we make 10-8, 7-6-3 on the river. And if we go over to stud flop draw in this situation, if he checks to us and we make the 10, and we kind of like just look at the equity for a second, it looks like we have around roughly 60% against his range. Now, that's kind of a theoretical range because, again, if we just if we think about like what his hand is here, because XM does check, and when he checks here, again, something is wrong, right? Like if he made a 9, he probably should be betting. I'm basically saying that I have an 8 draw, so maybe not. That might not be the case. But I also think too, like when he makes this 10 here, we've already said that we don't think he has a 10. Or sorry, he most likely made a 10. So the question here is like, I don't think he has a 9 because some of his 9 range probably wants to value bet on the river. Again, that might not be the case, but I do think that players in general would probably bet a 9 here more often than not. And again, like the way this hand's kind of played out, he's saying that something's wrong with his hand. So the question here is, do we value bet 10-8 on this river? And I think the very obvious answer is yes. I think we have to go for thin value. I think more often than not, our opponent here is going to show up with 10-9 and call us on the river. And there's times when, like, you know, we run this out and say we make, you know, trip sevens, we're going to find a bluff. I think we're just going to get called like so often in this situation that we just have to value bet thin with like a 10-8 against a 10-9. So we go along those lines and we bet the river. And he thinks for a second, and he does call us with a 10-9, 6-4-2. Now, it is important to notice, and again, you know, playing against your own opponents, this is one of the reasons why I strongly recommend at least recording your videos, if not going back past your hand histories. Phenom makes this super easy. So, you know, you can go back. I haven't tried to see how long I can go back for, but it's definitely I at least 7 days, if not more. But you can go back in the replayer and replay your sessions really quick if you want to find some interesting hands and write them down. But as we can see, I don't think he tried to isolate raise with ace king in the hole, but he definitely had one of those combos. So he either had king 4 in the hole or ace 4 in the hole. And I tried to isolate me. And again, like that was my rough-ish estimation, is that he probably was raising at a decent clip. And I think a lot of players do that in general. So I think that range is definitely wide. But it is good to know roughly what you think your opponent's playing range-wise, because then you can kind of like start making a range of what you think their hands are versus your hand and versus your range. I mean, it's all obviously a little bit different here. If like I'm bringing with like the jack of diamonds, and this person over here is raising with the deuce like 100%. So then like the range is totally changed. But if I know how I'm doing against like a 65% range, like obviously, then I can kind of play accordingly. After briefly, we're gonna just run back over here some of the other sims that I wanted to look at. On 6th Street, I was just really curious, kind of like how his hand was really doing. You know, if you change it to an ace or a 4 here, I don't think this is going to matter. So he's basically got 65% equity against my hand. Even if I change my hand to a range here and say range, we'll just get like, you know, basically like a top 10%. I can't like unpair the cards, but if we said something along this line, yeah, like it doesn't matter. He's basically pushing like 2/3 equity in the situation. So this is obviously just a very, it's just a misbet. But again, like we're talking about the ranges in the spot. On 5th Street, we looked against his range. We basically had 63%. So we were doing, we made, you know, we made a good range raise, and that was the only thing that realistically mattered. And the other thing that I wanted to show here just briefly with respect to deuce to 7 versus ace to 5, this is an ace to 5 range over here, where again, like say we're up against a rough hand, flushes don't matter in ace to 5 razz, so even though these are all spades, it does not matter. But basically saying he's like got a made 10 with a 9 draw versus a worse hand but has a better draw, where he's still just a slight favorite. But again, if you look at the equities in this situation, you know, they're basically flipping, right? Like this is just basically your all-in coin flip, like ace, king, jacks, etc. But in this situation here, you know, he's just flipping on 6th Street, where technically he's supposed to get like the thin bet in and then like make a river decision. You're like always supposed to like check this river hand in this spot over to the big draw. And again, if you look at the difference in equities here, it's basically a flip. But if you go back over to the range in this situation, we can see that, sorry, that's a river range. Over here, he has at least like 60% equity. But obviously, like looking at his hand versus my range, he's got basically 2/3 equity. So it's a big difference. And the one way that I like to explain it is if you're familiar with like draw equity and like 0-1 spots and deuce to 7 on the last draw. So say like a person stands pat in front of you and you have like an 8 draw, or if say like they take one in front of you and you have a pat 10, what's your equity? Usually you have to just kind of like, even if you have a wheel draw, usually you just have to bite the bullet and pat the 10, because the difference in equity is like significant. You're like trading 10 equity points there if you break your 10 versus patting it. And it's kind of the same thing in deuce to 7 razz for the most part. So my tip to you guys going forward is like, if you're familiar with any of the deuce to 7 razz ranges, I would definitely say that it's very equatable in a lot of these spots. Obviously, you have even more information, like a lot of times with respect to the dead cards. So yeah, I mean, like this is just I think a really cool example of a hand where we can kind of dig in and see the slight differences in deuce to 7 razz versus like ace to 5. But that was a deuce to 7 razz hand. Let's jump on over to the stud high hand. All right, guys, hand 2 here. Let's jump in. It is a stud high hand. First thing we're going to notice here is that I have the high card, and all 3 of my cards are the higher than the board cards. So I think when folded to here, it becomes pretty much an easy steal or open, whatever you want to call it. But the deuce of hearts kind of bring it in. The 7 and 6 of diamonds are going to fold in this situation, and it's going to come over to the 5. The 5 is going to call, and the 4 is going to re-raise, and the deuce is going to fold. So that's kind of the setup here. What we have in the background is also we're going to use pro poker tools for this one. We also kind of have ranges pre-programmed in there. I've not done any work on this, and unlike the last hand where I think I actually played it close to correct, if not correct, this one I didn't really love my play, and this is why I wanted to put this one in here. Also, I had to cut the video a little bit because I was playing a tournament in the background, so this just makes it a little bit cleaner as opposed to jumping back and forth. So apologize at the jumps, but again, it folds to us, and we open the jack 8-10, 5 calls, and the 4 raises, and we are going to yeah, this is, we were jumping around there. And once it gets to us, it's going to go call. So it's going to go call here in a second, but let's start with the ranges. So if we look here, I'm assuming, obviously mine's pretty easy. Like mine's pretty well defined at this point. I have one combo of jack 8-10 with the 2 clubs. Now we need to put this player on a range. And the first thing we need to do realistically is like, okay, let's think about what he's flatting with here. And what I decided to give this range for the most part is 5 with a random, and that does include trips. So he could be rolled up here and be trapping. I think that's all possible, but kind of unlikely, but we'll give it to him anyways, just because it's one combo or 2 combos, whatever it is. Sorry, 3 combos? 3 combo? I can't even think about it right now. But whatever the combo is, it's kind of a low combo. Or in this situation here, you could have something like 2 hearts. Also here, I'm giving him kind of like flatting with maybe like 2 big cards over the 10. This requirement right here, this requirement basically means he needs to have 1 big heart in the hole and the other a different suit because he did not re-raise me. Also here, I'm going to give him something like deuce through 9-9 since he did not re-raise me. I think that's a kind of a general range. Now this is a 3-6 game. This isn't like a 20-40 game. If it was like something like a higher limit game, then I think ranges would be a little different, but just kind of guessing what I think my opponent's range here with the flat. Now, when our opponent here with the 4 of diamonds, now 2 bets, his range is narrower and it's definitely better. So if we look at what we give him here, we basically give him rolled up 4-4, something like aces through 10s. He could have like a lower pocket pair in the hole, but I don't necessarily know if that's the case. Theoretically here, he could do some also re-raising with like maybe 4 ace in the hole. I think that's also possible. But it's such a small combo that I'm not really going to give too much credence to it at this point. Also, I did have a marking on him, so I didn't really think that this was that type of hand where he's trying to like isolate and kind of like force the action with maybe a mediocre hand. I thought his range was a little bit stronger. So again, we give him 4s, aces through 10s. And then the other equivalent here, basically I give him 2 biggish cards, and the requirement here is that they're both diamonds. So he could be 3-betting us theoretically here with like, ace, king, and diamonds. The one thing that I do want to say though is for both of these ranges, in this situation too, like sometimes you can maybe give like 5, 6, 7 to this range, maybe a clue and a heart or something like that. A 6 at 7 is dead. Now, some players in this game aren't necessarily counting it, but I'm not really giving again too much to that range. I think this like defined range is probably a little bit better. And then also again, like 2 diamonds are dead, so theoretically here, this might not be the case. Like, I think if he does have two big cards in the hole with 2 diamonds, he probably should be doing a little more flatting just because of the 2 dead diamonds. I have not looked at any of these equities. I'm going to do these with you. And then as the hand goes on, we'll also narrow the range a little bit. So let's see how we're doing here. We don't have a ton of equity against these ranges. Well, I mean, we're doing fine. I mean, we need 33% theoretically to continue here in like a perfect world scenario, but obviously there's a lot of dead money. So we're still continuing 27. We're definitely getting the right price. I mean, if we even like look at the theoretical right price in the situation here, we don't expect this player to call. If we take out the $3 we put in, we're getting something like 6 to 1. So we only need, what is it, 1 in 7, something like 14%, I think. So obviously we're getting the right price. We're never folding in that spot. We're going to continue and see what card that we hit on 4th and what everyone else hits. And levitation calls. Again, apologize for the jumping around. All right. So here on 4th Street, this is a really interesting street for a couple different reasons. One, now there is a 3rd dead diamond for my opponent, and he catches the Queen of Diamonds, which also like is in his range for like, Queen, something along those lines. Plus, like the 5/5 is relatively live here in this situation for making 3 5s. I doubt, at this point, like obviously, this hand is ever really quads. I mean, obviously there's one combo, but it just doesn't happen too often. So we have to really think like how we're doing here. Now, obviously we're open-ended with a 3 to a straight flush. Now, what's kind of weird here is I would say like the 5s are usually supposed to go ahead and, bet at a very high frequency when they open pair on 4th Street. There's no double betting, but still, I think they're just supposed to bet. Also here, I think in this situation too, like we have the widest opening range by far. Now we do fold some of our worst hands. There's no doubt about it. So we are continuing at some clip, but I still think like the open 5s are supposed to bet at a decent bit in this spot. So if we play it for a second here, surprisingly, it's going to check over to me, and I decide to bet with the 10-9, and I actually think this is a mistake. There's a couple reasons why. I think it's some decent portion. Like, again, I think that this hand over here does have some flushes. It does have some big pairs. It is technically rolled up sometimes. This player over here could have trips. And I also want to like theoretically hide some of my range here because my range is relatively wide. So I actually think taking a free card here makes some sense. I don't think these cards on 4th Street I'm ever going to get that many folds, if ever, given the action. So I think this bet here is actually a mistake, even though we have more equity in the hand theoretically. Now, if we kind of go over to this spot, we catch the 9 of clubs, obviously a good card for us. He catches the 5 of diamonds, the 4 of diamonds, catches the Queen of diamonds. And if we just kind of think about like the range here, let's just start and give him the same amount of range, because obviously like it's a little bit weird that I think it went check to us, but let's start out, and we're still not even pushing the theoretical correct range in this situation. Now if we go back over here and we bet, one thing that we what happens here is that the 5s call, and the Queen 4 is going to also call. Now, before we go to the next street here, I think we can actually remove 5x. I think what we can actually now give him is like he's got 5/5 as opposed to trips, because I think that he would have re-raised trips in this situation to try to get it heads up. So at this point, juncture, I think he's got like 5/5, heart, and some like maybe some overpair combo. Again, this is somewhat, I think, okay. I don't think he has queen or ace at this point. Like, I think some of these combos now are a little bit reduced. He could be a little bit scared just based. I'm going to still keep him in there because I think some players are also just scared when the door card pairs 5, so they might be willing to check at some clip. I think what I'm going to do though is I think I'm going to remove queen. That's one thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ace, king, jack, and 10. So little bit reducing some of his combos in this situation. But again, I think, kind of the way this hand's played out so far. So once we reduce the combos, we can kind of see how we're doing at this point. Not that it really matters too much. We're basically flipping against the range again. Nothing like too special. And if we go back now to Fifth Street, let's see here. The five of hearts the fives are going to catch a four of hearts. The four is going to catch the ace of hearts, and we catch the king of spades. So we can put this into now odds oracle, king of spades, four of hearts, ace of hearts. And basically what I was trying to do, obviously, on 4th Street is I was trying to turn my hand somewhat into a semi-bluff, but I just don't think anyone's folding. And, it was kind of weird to me that, like, everyone checks. So usually sometimes when I have, like, those weakish type of hands, I kind of start turning my hand into a bluff. Like, obviously, I'm opening it into, so I'm not, like, turning it into a super bluff by any means. I definitely have equity in the hand, but I also think just given the wide range situation there, I think I should check. So it's kind of interesting, again, because the fives now check again, and the 4 queen ace now checks again. And again, this hand to me is just like, it's kind of screaming like, what is going on in the situation? Like, this doesn't make any sense, because the fives should be, if it had trip fives, it should have bet by now. So we can remove some of that. We do have a good portion of his range, though, is being heart. If we go back over here again, if you kind of think of the combinatorics in the situation, like, he does have. The other thing too is man, I really think we can probably remove some of these 2-pair hand combos, just kind of given the way that this hand is played out. So actually, kind of going back here, I think we can probably remove like the deuces through the nines, honestly. And we can kind of see how we're doing at this point, because obviously he didn't like check raise me when I had like 10-9 on my board. So I don't think he really has 2-pair that much, given the way this hand's kind of played out. So if we're start narrowing the ranges, but it does check to us. And at this point, again, I kind of decided to turn my hand into a semi-bluff, which I don't love, again, just kind of given the action. Also, our opponent over here, he catches ace queen, and we did get 2-bet. So, there are some flush draws that he could still theoretically have here, even though there's 3 dead diamonds. And, if he's got like some sort of maybe like high diamonds here, he occasionally pairs the ace. He still could, like, theoretically. Now he doesn't have 4-4 obviously too often here, since the 4 is dead. It's just kind of like a weird hand the way this play him. But I again decided to turn my hand into a semi bluff, and I bet, just kind of given how the board texture is like running out at this point, and I still don't like this. I think this is like, I think I should have checked 4th Street, but now I think, given the fact that they've given me like the ability to take a free card here, I probably should go for the free card. I mean, again, like, pretty often here, I think like he's just going to have a flush draw. So it was a deuce of hearts is dead. Looking over, yeah, the deuce of hearts was the bring in, if we kind of just look over at the dead cards as well. And we get called, and now we get check raised. So obviously not the best spot in the world. I don't think this is ever realistically a full house. So the way this is played, like, in some fantasy world, this is like quad fives. But I don't think that's really the case here that often. So we're still calling here, obviously, with the open-ended draw, plus we have a backdoor straight flush draw. So we're not folding here, getting this price basically like 9-1. So we are going to call. It goes call, and at first, when I first see this card, I'm like, oh, this is a really good card for us when we open pair kings. But now he makes, open aces. And it does scare me a little bit, because like now at some frequency, like if he just, has like pocket aces in the hole, he just made quads, there's no dead aces. We're not loving this situation by any means. So again, if we kind of put the hand in, I mean, obviously our other opponent over here catches deuce clubs, which is just like should be a total brick theoretically. He could theoretically have like the 3-6 of hearts over here, that like makes sense for one combo, but I mean, like, our hand is basically a straight draw at this point once our opponent open pairs aces, and that's kind of it anyways. So if we go back over to the sim, we catch I think we catch the king of diamonds, right? We do catch the king of diamonds. So there's 4 dead diamonds, 2 clubs, and the ace of clubs. Now let's see how we're doing against this range here. And we still have about 15% against the range. Aces are going to lead into us. If you look at the price of the pot here, I mean, we're definitely getting the right price. We're getting over 10 to 1 to call. Plus, we have a player behind us. Now, if the player behind us finds a raise here, um, like obviously the range I think has to be technically adjusted. Like he theoretically here could have some sort of full house. Like it's not the most optimal way to play his hand because if he did have anything that wants to get us to fold, he should have raised. But sometimes you like I said that one combo of like 5-5 there is still lurking, I guess, in some world somewhere. So it is possible. But looking over the equities again on the river here, we're not necessarily like loving our hand, but we need to. I think we still need to with our the price we're getting here, even with like theoretical like reverse implied odds. We're getting once he bets here 7, we're getting 12 to 1. I think we definitely have the right price, so it's gonna go bet. Can't really raise here. Like I don't think this makes any sense. Plus, I think my opponent here could like just have us dead here at some dead portion. So we're gonna call. And levitation behind is also gonna call. And on the river here, we do make the straight. Obviously, I think like one of the things here is I think this would have just been more of a interesting, kind of check back on 4th and 5th street kind of hand, but we do make our hand on the river. So we are gonna put the randos in here for the ranges and see how we're doing theoretically, because obviously it changes a little bit when he bets. So what happens here is like obviously our equity drastically increases in the hand. I'm not saying that our hand becomes a raise if our opponent bets, kind of given the way this action's played out. But you can see now like we have a we definitely become the favorite in the hand given the ranges and how this hand's played out. So we are going to play it from here. He does bet, and the question here, like in my mind, was we could theoretically call. I think in game when I was doing the commentary, I was like, man, I mean, I feel like this is just like sometimes ace queen, quad aces, queens full. Kind of relooking at the hand and talking through it, I don't really think that makes too much sense just from the from the fact that the combos where he does have like queen queen, I think he bets 4th street. Some sort of combos with like maybe ace high flush draws, like can raise here on 5th street. I also thought that was a possibility. But given that, like I think my hand is kind of close to a raise, to be completely honest. But just something didn't necessarily sit right. Now I had my opponent checked here. I mean, like I have a very, very easy bet. I don't think that's even a question. But I kind of decided like what to do in game, and I decided to call. And levitation behind, he also calls. So now we can look at what they had in this spot, and it looks like calling you down. He did 3-bet us with ace 8 4, it looks like, of diamonds. So actually what we can probably do is we could have just adjusted the range a little bit, but we were most likely right, and we could see levitation actually did have a flush draw. So that's, I would say like one thing, if you have a little experience with stud against players who don't necessarily have as much experience with stud, I seem like a lot of these times, these type of hands, when they look like this on, when someone has like an open pair and they're playing it like kind of passively, and then, they catch another heart and continue, it just a lot of times it just kind of seems like a flush draw. So, like I said, sometimes maybe in some world they have quads, but it just doesn't seem very likely. But yeah, on the river, he didn't make a flush. He made aces full. So he ran off a full house here. I don't think the 3-bet here was ace queen. I think most likely it was through to a flush. But anyways, I think I just kind of overplayed my hand, especially on 4th street when looking at the 2 players here, when levitation open paired 5s and calling you down caught a suited queen 4 in this spot. So like I had the hand to do it with. I wasn't turning it into a 0 equity bluff like I was open-ended, plus I had backdoor clubs. And some people might tend to agree with me, like, maybe that was the type of hand that you want to start turning your hand into a semi-bluff. But I also think too, given the way this hand's played out, I just don't think I'm getting a lot of fold equity on later streets. So if anyone thinks that, maybe if anyone's stud experts out there are just kind of like, no, your hand actually is kind of like a good candidate to start turning into a semi bluff. I think actually in a different world, if I had the say this was the 10 of clubs up and maybe I had the 8 of clubs down below plus the jack of spades, if I had 2 clubs on my board, I actually think I might like that a little better. And the reason being wise is like maybe I can catch a 3rd club right away and then I might generate some fold equity on a later street. But I don't think catching the 10-9 offsuit here is going to give me that ability to get some fold equity right away on a later street either, just kind of given the way this hand plays out. So anyways, questions or comments or feedback. This was part 3 of Dereliction of Doooty. As always, guys, yeah, if you guys record up to 1 hour, you can send it in and we can do a review on it. And any sort of questions or comments in the comments section below, please let me know what you think. Until then, yeah, good luck at the tables. Play well. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.